Let's welcome in our panel for today. We have right here Josh Ward. Beside him, Vince Ferrara. Jimmy Himes back with us. Will West right there. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Let's take a look. The Lions score from last night. It was a rough game one, as I mentioned. Vols fall 9-5. Pitching let them down early, and their defense went back on the schneid. Thought they were off the schneid, they're back on the schneid. Not a great showing, obviously, and one of the interesting things when you look at the overall plan of this, you see the losing pitcher there was Stamos. Go back and take a look at this next graphic. Tony Vitello decided to go with two guys. He's been doing this for a while now, and you see it goes back all season, but to see the last time, the last three times he's used Stamos to open and then Causey to come in and handle those middle innings, hasn't gone well. 8 runs in 4 innings yesterday, 6 runs in 2 innings against Florida State, 5 runs in 6 innings against Evansville. And it doesn't look bad because Causey did a pretty good job for those other games down through there. And this is just the last 8 or 9 that they've done this way. But Stamos has had his troubles. You have to go all the way back to the Missouri game to find a game when he didn't at least give up 1 run. So you look at Texas A&M, Schlossnagle goes with their ace on the mound. Vitello, game 1, didn't go with his ace on the mound. Vince Ferrara, congratulations. I'm going to have you second guess. You're part of the broadcast team over there, but I'm going to have you second guess. Should he have gone with his ace as opposed to the duo last night?
No, I don't think so. Tony Vitello is about routine, and he's about what's worked. And they were 9-1 with Stamos starting and Causey going right after him. You know, when they gave up the 3 runs, you mentioned they're against Evansville, they were unearned runs because there were some defensive issues that popped up there as well. The big thing with Stamos is not giving up a run, because sometimes you give up a solo home run. If you're attacking the zone, that's the cost of doing business sometimes. It's holding them down and getting them at least one time through the lineup and sometimes a second time through the lineup. Then you get to Causey. When they've gone to Causey too early, that's when he is not quite as sharp. So that's happened the last 2 games. So I don't think off of last game you change what you do completely, because then you change routine for Beam and everybody else. So game 2 is the critical one. They've looked at series that way, and they look at this the same way as well. It either saves your season, or had they won last night, you win a championship. So he was much, much better last week. So there's really was no reason to change. It's just they went back to playing like they did against Florida State overall.
It's a good breakdown. Does everyone agree with it?
Yeah, I also think Tennessee didn't want to be here to have a bullpen game on for their Friday night pitcher, right? A.J. Russell, they expected to be in the rotation. I don't think you want to be here, but if you look at the next 2 games, A&M has 1 starter and then they run bullpen games out, right? So this is something that just kind of happens in modern baseball, even though for those of us that are of a certain age, we look at this and say, that's a really bad decision to run a bullpen game out there. But it worked for Tennessee until about four games ago, or 4 series ago. It was working pretty automatically for Tennessee, but the bottom's fallen out. Big thing that I noticed what Vince said, the last 3 games, 5 unearned runs in those last 3 games. That's not going to get it done during a bullpen game.
I don't know how Drew Beam works on X amount of days of rest, but I would have gone with Drew Beam to start. He was so effective in the most recent game against North Carolina, and Stamos and Causey, they didn't get it done in the World Series. It's been a disaster,
Right.
Because they've got 6 innings pitched, 14 hits, 13 runs, 11 earned runs. I just feel more comfortable with going with Drew Beam, who was so effective against North Carolina.
Josh?
I would have stuck with the routine because that's what they've done. It's not a typical 3-game series because of the stakes, but it is a 3-game series as they are used to playing through the conference schedule. The problem is they don't have an obvious answer for Friday and Saturday where you're guaranteed to go out there and have success. So if Drew Beam pitches in game 1 last night and they lose, then it's danger mode heading into game 2. It's almost panic mode. So I think part of the thought is if game 1 doesn't go right, we have Drew Beam that we can count on to get us to the winner-take-all game 3, and that's the position they're in. Obviously, they prefer to win game 1 and have Drew Beam be the guy that can close it out, go 2-0 and win. But I would have stuck with the routine because of how it had worked. If you decide I'm going to go back to Causey as the starter and not Stamos, that I would understand. But I would have not have thrown Beam in game 1.
But the reason why they use Causey in that role is because he wasn't as comfortable as a starter and wasn't as effective. And that's the same thing with Chris Cortez, one of the better relievers for A&M. He started some games, but he wasn't as good in that role.
Right.
He's been dominant when he comes into the ball game, and that's probably, we'll get to it, probably what they're going to do in game 2. So it's just guys in certain roles are at their best. You use the word panic. That sends a panic message to your team if you're all of a sudden in the championship series changing things that have worked. It may have not have been perfect, but you found ways to get it done. So Causey at times has been one of their better pitchers.
I don't see that as being panic. I see it as being effective.
Well, the other side,
I
though,
just-
is you have Xander Sechrest then, who's already going to have to pitch on Monday if necessary on short rest. Do you pitch him on shorter rest, or do you let these guys just get an extra day of rest? They already had 6 days rest to be able to pitch yesterday. So you don't have other options besides Beam and Sechrest outside of going with that bullpen game, and so they kind of had to put it somewhere. Why not on Saturday?
Let's move on and talk about the defense, because especially in the infield, again, you had issues last night. 3 errors, they all wound up hurting you. We talked last week. You said the defense is going to be fine, and through the week it was. Yesterday it had one of those glitch games again. Do we feel confident enough they're going to win 2 games to win a national championship? Do we feel confident enough that you're going to get 2 good games of defense moving forward, or are you cautiously looking at this thing, thinking these guys can throw one the wrong direction at any moment? Where are you on their defense at the moment?
I don't think it's definitely not good. It is definitely a problem. I do think that if they lose, it probably won't be because they have unearned runs and errors and things like that. It'll be because Texas A&M just smokes them with that deep pitching staff that they have.
You had that's another issue. You had a ton of guys on base last night that you couldn't get in.
Yeah.
So, all right, defense, guys left on base. What other issues did you see last night that's correctable?
Yeah, well, and I would say because we've seen them once bounce back from a bad defensive showing against Florida State, in the same ballpark, I think that should create some confidence. From a bounce back standpoint, Christian Moore, Kavares Tears have to bounce back at the plate, which they know. If they're going over and leaving runners in scoring position again, then Texas A&M is probably going to win the series in 2. If those guys bounce back and play better, and Drew Beam is what they expect him to be, that's, I think, what gives them a shot at Game 3.
I thought last night wasn't about what Tennessee didn't do. It was about what Texas A&M did. You have to give them credit. They were better than Tennessee last night. They had an incredible game plan from a pitching standpoint. Weiner, their pitching coach, has been fantastic. They're all through Omaha. And so they got Tennessee behind in counts. Tennessee likes to work counts, put pitches on opposing pitchers. They had Tennessee in 0-2 holes all night long and then just hit them with low stuff so that if they do make contact to fight out of it, disproportionately get ground balls.
I see that a little differently. I thought Tennessee's lack of discipline at the plate was awful. They had 17 strikeouts. They had at least 4 or 5 times where they swung at a ball in the dirt for a strikeout.
Yeah.
They took 4 or 5 third strikes. And as Josh mentioned, 2 of your best hitters, Moore and Tears, were 0 for 10 with 5 strikeouts. I thought it's about as bad as Tennessee's been at the plate with their discipline, with swinging at bad pitches and taking good pitches.
Well, execution with 2 strikes to me was big. Texas A&M was great at that. They had 7 hits with 2 strikes. 7, including 5 RBI, 4 RBI hits with 2 strikes. Tennessee wasn't able to execute those put-away pitches. It's something Beam had issues with until the last game, and he was fantastic at it. And Tennessee could not execute those. And A&M was just putting the ball in play. Tennessee also 2 of 13 with runners in scoring position, 2 of 11 with 2 outs. They've also been really good in those areas. They've been as good as anyone in the tournament, and they weren't able to execute in those areas either.
One other thing I'll throw out here, though, last night, and of course, you look at the message boards, you look at social media, the big story, there were 2. One, why didn't you start Drew Beam? The other big story was, well, you choked. You just got there on the big stage and you choked. Texas A&M hasn't lost in this tournament. They're number 3 in the nation for a reason.
They're a terrific team.
Yes, it's like if you're in the Super Bowl and you lose, it's not a choke. It's the Super Bowl. There's a pretty good team across from you over there. It happens. This is the World Series final series. You're against a great team. I don't think choke had anything to do with last night at all.
I agree. I thought it was more about what A&M did. I thought they had a great
Give
strategy.
credit. Yep.
And now let's see how Tennessee adjusts to that strategy. Also, does the home plate umpire let you have that right below the knee, right at the knee? Is that going to be a strike today? It was last night. Will it be today?
Well, it'll be a different umpire, so you have to ride that wave. So you just never know.
A&M put the ball in the right spot when they needed to. There were several balls that weren't hit that hard. They were hit to the right place. Tennessee didn't have that, but there was no choke job by Tennessee. There was a better job done by the Aggies.
Agreed. All right. I do want to mention something here before we go to break, and that is something last week we had, I think it was YouTube TV. The grid guide said that we were off at 12 o'clock because something is like professional lacrosse was on ABC. So everybody who DVR'd us via YouTube TV, their show cut off. So I'm going to give you a quick note here. There are tons of cable, satellite streaming providers, DirecTV, Comcast, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. They get their program information from different sources. It's not coming out of Channel 6, which annoys the heck out of Channel 6 and me, which means that it might be right on Comcast and wrong on YouTube TV, or vice versa. So my lesson to you, my question to you, ignore the guides. We're going to be here live every Sunday from 11 to 12:30 unless I announce a change a week prior. Otherwise, we're 90 minutes every Sunday at 11 o'clock right here. So set your DVR by the station and time if you can. Some allow you to do this. You just go and set it for 90 minutes at 11 a.m. on Channel 6 every Sunday. Don't click Sports Source. Set the time and the place. See if that works for you. And then if your DVR does cut you out or you miss part of the show live, you can watch the full show at sportsource.tv or on our YouTube channel every Sunday afternoon. So thank you for that. Sorry for any inconvenience for those of you who had the show cut off last week. Trust me, it ticks me off more than it does you. All right, when we come back, let's get you ready for Game 2. That's coming up at 2 o'clock today. We'll break down the pitching matchup and more. We've talked about Drew Beam. Let's follow up on Drew Beam next. Come on back.